Asteroid of fear.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. That's right, you'll be hearing this on Friday, which is the 11th, but I'm here on the 9th, Wednesday, banging this one out. The 9th is kind of one of those pivotal dates as I started my ER career on February 9th at BRAC, downtown Austin. I want to say it was probably a Wednesday too. Or maybe it was a Thursday. You have to go back and look. April 9th, 2009, maybe? Um, was it a Wednesday or a Thursday? Maybe I worked Wednesday, Thursday, Friday because they were 312s. Or maybe I worked Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But being that I was in training, I'm sure it was probably a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And yeah, I can remember my first day starting. And, huh. Or did we have orientation for a day and a half? Not 100% sure. But I do remember my first shift and yeah, arriving in the ER. I get to shadow tech in the express lane, the express aisle, the express area where your, you know, stuffy noses go. But my first mission, my first arrival was me and Minnie P, which he hates that name. Shout out to Paul. Um, yeah, we had to take a dead body down to the morgue. Maybe that's one of those first day things. Maybe it just happened to be, or they're going to determine if you're going to stay or not. But yeah, 'twas not my first dead body to see, so no big deal. I ended up staying there till 2015, and on another day, my last day there was March 3rd, which is also my dad's birthday. So again, big on dates, how they kind of come and go. But yeah, maybe you're hearing this Friday. You might be hearing it another day. This might just be a spare episode. I had intentions to interview someone today. It may happen tomorrow. It may not. So just in case it doesn't, I'm gonna go ahead and record one. Throw this out there, and if not, I'll keep it as a backup. Since I still haven't pulled the trigger on Podmatch because of the floodgates. And so I haven't lined up any interviews um, other than the one I had that fell through. That's okay. These things happen, and the person couldn't do it for good reason. And yeah, it'll kind of lead into this. This person I was going to interview, they just weren't up for it today. They're having a hard time. Um, and I think it kind of leads into works out perfect for this episode. And so, kind of this episode, the topic is going to be suffering in silence, the silent load, what men carry that no one sees. So, we're going to dive into the unspoken emotional, mental, and spiritual weight that men carry from being the provider, the protector, the example, to the silent warrior. Um, Talk about how society expects strength without cracks and how dangerous that pressure can be if it's not unpacked. So, yeah. We were supposed to interview, and I called him up, um, kind of to see if he was going to be down, make sure, double check, so I could set up because I'd showered and whatnot. And I was determining, you know, do I want to take a little energy shot or, something to stimulate the mind prior to recording? So I called him up and he was just kind of in despair, having a hard time. And yeah, yeah. Hmm. But yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. It's like I debate how much to say, how much not to say, but everybody here knows. It was probably about a year ago. My second interview was with Marcel, Gray Hair Wear, Tomorrow Needs You. And we were going to run it back for a second go round, catch up. I've talked to him over between the interview and now, but, we were just going to go for a second interview, but, he's not, he's just having a tough time, and I believe March was the anniversary of his daughter's passing. And so, what comes along with all that, the remembrance. And if you haven't heard that episode, go back and give it a listen. It's an extraordinary listen. Um, it was my second interview ever. And, that episode's taught me a lot. Still continues to teach me, I guess you could say. Or I still think about it often. But yeah, go back and check out that episode. And if you've heard it, then you know why. Yeah, he's just having a hard time. But let's explore the hidden burdens of keeping it together at all costs. I think this is something we struggle with as men. Wanting to be, I don't know, do we want to seem put together? Man, this is a tough one. And it's interesting because my wife and I were watching, what is it? Oh, man. It's an MTV show with Ronnie and Travis. Help, I think I'm being hidden or I'm in a secret relationship. Maybe that's something where partners hide their uh, significant others from their family. And there's usually a reason. Maybe, oh, I gotta scratch my back here. Maybe, maybe they do nefarious shit. Maybe they're a stripper. Maybe they're still married. Maybe they got a gambling problem. Um, Maybe they're a liar. But we ran across this episode yesterday. We kind of binge watched it a little bit. Sometimes we'll do that. Wife's halfway on the phone. We're halfway watching TV, hanging out. But man, I cannot remember the couple. But there was, you know, the girl felt like she was being hidden from the guy's family, this and that, the other. And they go through all these possibilities. And I can remember one of the things was, almost like she was embarrassed somewhat when they were saying, like, well, what does he do for a living? Oh, he was a bartender at the time. And she kind of like shut that down, because she wanted it to appear as if the person she's dating is put together. And I know that's something that, women have to struggle with is when they bring home a guy. I have daughters. Um, what are they, are they good people? Do they provide? Um, are they well put together? And she seemed to be more concerned with that. Well, there's all these theories like maybe he's seeing someone else or, because he lives in New Jersey, she lives in New York. Um, I can't remember what all the theories were. But in the end, it turned out he was hiding her because He had $69,000 of tax debt. And the reason I'm laughing is because she was like, "What?" And then as soon as like it kind of like simmered down for a second and Ronnie tried to talk to her, she goes, "Give me a minute. I blacked out for a moment." I just thought that was so funny. Um, but yeah, he had started a business and then kind of, I think in 2019 or something, and the pandemic hit. And we all know what happened with the pandemic. I got laid off. A lot of businesses suffered. Um, and he got behind on his taxes, I guess, after like the first or second year. And then with the pandemic, less money coming in, just accumulated and accumulated. And so he was embarrassed to take her around his family because he was afraid his family would mention something. And they'd been together 2.5 years. And, you get this kind of I get it from like a guy's standpoint. Um, I get it from the girl's standpoint. But, my wife and I just hit 19 years on April 1. And, I think about our relationship, how it evolved, meeting parents, XYZ, all this stuff. But it was never really like about them. I don't know. Our relationship, we were two broken people, both coming out of relationships and found each other. And we've always tackled everything together. I mean, there's times where I worked full time and she stayed home. There's times where she worked full time and I stayed home. Um, there's times we both worked, or we both worked formal jobs or odd jobs or a mixture of both. But it's always together, you know? And it just kind of depends. I mean, when my daughter was born, when Sophie was born, she stayed home until she wanted to work. She didn't have to work, but she wanted to work once Sophie went into daycare. So I get it. We're a team. I think most couples might be a team. But this kind of led me back. Seeing this led me back to this idea, these ideas of, and in case you don't know, I was a live in caregiver for 3.5 months with a 97-year-old veteran. And for those of you who do know, you'll know that the time period they lived in, how different it was. He was in the Navy, he was gone a lot. His wife was a stay at home wife. And I want to say in those periods, there was a long time where there was a lot of homemakers, stay at home women. Women wanted to get in the workforce and become CEOs, and they did that. And some people still chose to be stay at home parents. Um, but that was kind of this model that was reflected. And the reason I'm mentioning or trying to tie this all in together is that, she had, I think, in her brain, this idea, this traditional idea of, I guess, what the relationship should be like and that he should be able to take care of her, maybe. I don't know. Um, but obviously, he felt kind of the same way because he was like, well, till I pay off this debt, I can't really get married. He didn't want to tell her about it. But that's going to cut into buying an engagement ring. And of course, he doesn't want to ask somebody else to take this on and pay it off. I mean, they didn't create it together, but besides the point. Um, I think with a true love, I mean, people get married with student debt and it kind of becomes yours, but I don't know where the discrepancy is. Whether it's in my brain, in others' brains, in society. The world was one way a long time ago. And it kind of had to be, and men went to war, women stayed home until you had Rosie Riveter and everybody chipped in, but then men came back and um, we had this family model and then it shifted. And I've had some other interviews where we talked about this with like Jason Lang of Evolutionary Men, in that the world is so vastly different with women being able to be CEOs, um, XYZ, stay at home dads, that, you know, as a family unit, you can decide what configuration and iteration you want that is best for your family and that allows for the thriving, I guess, the most love, the most support. Um, and it doesn't have to be this old model that we've all grown up with, that was even depicted in movies and TV of man goes to work all day, woman stays home and does this. Or, man goes to work all day, woman comes home, does the kids, man goes and drinks beer with buddies. I don't know. But we don't always listen to what people say, but we see what they do. And so you take film, you're raised this way, you see, you imitate. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. I mean, we have actors, they're paid to imitate or act, pretend, whatever you want to call it. But I think if this shit is going into your brain all the time, unconsciously, unknowingly, you're probably not even aware of it. And you wonder why we have these expectations, but I don't know that it's proper to have the same expectations. The world is so different, and I think it depends on each couple, each person. But it's like, to make sure maybe you're not necessarily going off of what you were raised with or what you saw, versus now you and your partner can do it however you want to do it, I guess, is kind of the point. But I think it's partially that old model that can lead to some of this problem, of some of this, what I was talking about, of the hidden burden of keeping it all together, as a man trying to be a provider, a protector. Um, I struggle with this, not as a protector, but definitely a provider. Um, getting laid off from a corporate healthcare job where my wife didn't have to work, and now she works. Now we both work and we do many different things to work. But, and it felt awkward. And I think maybe it even felt awkward to her in the beginning. And she pushed for me to go back. Is it for the money? Insecurity? Yeah. I'm certain there's a level of that. To scratch my back here. But is it also partially a model of society that we've seen our entire lives? Man, go to work, get out of the house, go to work. And it took a long time, of whether it was doing odd jobs, online stuff, the podcasting, Uber Eats, um, the many different things that were like, in years, years of seeing that we were fine without the corporate job, that we were okay, but then explaining it in a way of, hey, I no longer have to call in if one of us is sick. If the baby's sick, we don't have to call in. We don't have to ask for PTO. We don't have to do this or that. So it's like destroying the model, I guess you could say, turning the model upside down. But also, that old model, that old thing we imitated, you know, that was just the way the world was. That was just kind of a guide. The world is much different now. So the guide would be different. And it doesn't, I don't think it has to be one way. But as we fold back into that, I related that back to myself of, you know, being a young boy, seeing relationships, having relationships, seeing stuff on TV, this and that, the other. And, I'm trying to think as a little boy, are we taught that, hey, you need to grow up and be successful enough to take care of your family, to be the provider, um, versus growing up and thinking of it or being taught like it's a partnership. I mean, both my parents worked. I stayed a lot with grandparents and relatives. Um, so, I mean, what was modeled to me was both parents worked. And I'm probably sure that's what's modeled because it takes both people most days nowadays. But I don't know if growing up as a little boy I had that expectation of, hey, I need to go to college, I need to do this and I need to do that because if I want a woman, I need to be able to take care of her to the fullest. But when I was watching that episode, it gave me that thought of like, wow, 2.5 years in a relationship they were, and it couldn't even thrive to its potential because of something that was being withheld. But, I had to ask myself, was it being withheld because of these thoughts, these models, these pressures as men we grow up and were raised to believe? I don't know. But I mean, I think as a man, um, I feel like I have a certain core drive to want to provide, want to protect. But I think it depends on, you're going to have, now, you have relationships where the partner, the wife, the spouse, whatever, might be the breadwinner. Um, I know some men have a problem with that. I feel like I've read it on an Instagram post or a Threads post or something like, would you be okay with that if your wife made more money than you? Does that take away from that masculine feeling of being the provider? Or do you think of it like a partnership, like my wife and I? I mean, this is one iteration of our life now. We've had many different over the 19 years, as I stated. And am I the full provider? No. Am I a contributor? Yes. Is my wife the full provider? No. Is she a contributor? Yes. But I don't know how other men feel about that. If it, demasculates them. You definitely need to be the protector. Um, 100%. And the example. But when Jason and I talked, we talked about how women had this movement and they progressed so far, and men, we were kind of just left behind in the dust, not evolving, staying stuck in these old models of whether it's family, work, society. Um, and then, hey guys, quick break, but this one's important. If you're tired of setting goals that never leave the Notes app, or you're feeling stuck in the same cycle, let's change that. Accountability isn't about pressure, it's about partnership. I offer one on one accountability coaching for those who are ready to show up, not just for their goals, but for themselves, their families, and their purpose. Whether you're working on discipline, building better habits, or simply trying to stay consistent, I got you. No fluff, no judgment, just real conversations and real progress. If that sounds like something you need, hit the link in the show notes and let's connect. All right, back to the episode. You know, how everything is changed and shifted. And then we look at men, and, we have to understand that in this crazy world we live in today, with most of what we know or have grown up with having been turned upside down, especially as Gen Xers and uh, those shortly after us, kind of pre digital age. Um, you know, man, before the digital age, men had a problem talking. It's always been known that men do not like to open up and be vulnerable. And I don't know if we're getting I think we're getting to a better place now. Way more people are open about it, whether it's therapy, being vulnerable, you know, showing that being vulnerable isn't weak, that it's a form of leadership. But, I think as men, we kind of have to be able, we need to be able to understand this, not just as men, but as society, that, you know, if we don't unpack all this, it's dangerous as men. We can be danger to others, danger to ourselves. But I think it's, in order for us to be strong as men, we have to look at all this and try to understand and go, being a man in 2025 is way different than it was years ago, even in the 90s. I think about what my dad knew, or what was at the forefront then versus what's at the forefront now. I feel like definitely more is expected of me out of a man at this day and age than my father, than what was expected of him in the 80s and 90s. Because I graduated in 93, so I feel like the expectations weren't, fucking go to work, make sure your kids are home for, at sundown, shit like that. But there wasn't the mental health component that's at the forefront. Um, there wasn't all this kind of like mass violence, school shootings. Those were relatively new. Yeah, it was just a different world. And now I think as a 2025 man, I'm expected to know about many different things, from technology to how to be a sensitive father to three daughters and a wife, how to be emotionally in touch and available and not displaying toxic masculinity or any of that shit and being sensitive to this, that, and the other. And not to mention when you go into a corporate world or fucking political shit and DEI and all these rules to include and make everybody happy and not hurt anyone. I mean, yeah, it can lead to a lot of frustration. Mm. But yeah, I think I don't know. But I think the same thing goes for moms too, especially driven women. You know, they go to work all day and they're still come home and they're wife and mom and doing laundry, cooking dinner. So I think it's more in 2025, especially if you're going to have a partner. I think it is exactly that, a partnership. It almost takes two people to make it. It almost takes two people to juggle the many different things. You know, not mom always does this, dad always does this. It's, hey, whoever's available gets to do it. You know, I cooked dinner 2 nights ago. Maybe my wife cooks dinner a different night. And so I think as men, it's important to, I think, embrace the shift and kind of tap into that. You know, I mean, there's a lot of men shifts, so that's not like a feminine thing, but, of not necessarily, I think men and women both in a partnership have to have your masculine and feminine energies and they need to come out at different times and places, but I think both should be able to do both. And I think maybe the reason we as men sometimes struggle is because we're using this old playbook, this old model, and we're trying to be, I would say we're trying to be everything but in a more rigid way. Maybe it feels abnormal for some men to tap into that more feminine side and, step out of that little box of, hey, I went to work, brought home the bacon, and now I'm going to, you know, drink beer with my boys. You can handle the rest. Because I think, yeah, it's kind of this, at least that's what I think of. I feel like that's how it was growing up. I feel like that's what I saw. And I feel a lot of it, maybe even similar, acted out in my life when I worked those kinds of jobs. But yeah, I think we kind of got to be fluid and flexible. I don't mean like gender fluid. I mean fluid in adapting and, not feeling like, hey, we have to be all these different things. But I think that kind of goes back into that, whether it's being vulnerable, speaking, asking for help. Yeah, I just had this weird thought of sometimes too. I don't know. Is it when we need help? Do we reach out as men? Do we reach out to other men? Or do we reach out to our significant other, our spouse? What if your spouse is the opposite sex? um, do you ask them for help? I know myself, even though I've been with my wife for 19 years, I've known her. She knows so much about me. Sometimes I still have a hard time being vulnerable with her or asking for help. Is it that I don't want to appear weak? I don't know. I think as men, we have this kind of, we don't like to talk. We don't like to ask for help. We kind of like to figure shit out on our own. And sometimes that's rewarding. I think there's something rewarding to working through something, figuring it out. But then there's also a point in time when I think we have to learn to ask for help. We have to know when, and then we have to be courageous enough to ask for it when we need it. But, men, I would ask you, do you ask your wife for help? Do you ask other men? Who do you talk to when you need to vent? Yeah, I don't know. I find that interesting. I don't know if it's a male female thing, but also, your wife's supposed to be your best friend. So you should be able to tell her anything or your partner, your spouse. I don't want to, I have a wife. And if you have a wife, then go to your wife. If you have a husband, if you're same sex, then go to your partner. Whatever you want to call them. It doesn't matter. I'm just saying sometimes your significant other. But I wonder why we don't often go to them first. Is it that we feel embarrassed? We feel we'll look weak? We feel they'll be mad? I know a lot for me, some of the ways I kind of release and get my stuff out is I journal every day. Um, you can go to therapy. I haven't started, but I plan to. You have community. I have friends. I have other podcasters I can reach out to. Um, yeah, I have a few people I can reach out to for different things. I think sometimes maybe I reach out to different people depending on what it is, what it's for. Because while I've been with my wife for 19 years, I've also known my best friend for 42 years. So, yeah, there's things he knows about me and things I can talk to him about that maybe I wouldn't necessarily talk to my wife about. But I think I usually talk to her about everything for the most part. But prayer, community, therapy, journaling. I do all but therapy at the moment. But journaling, I find is beneficial for me. But yeah, I think it's a lot to take in as a man. And I think probably being a man is even more difficult because the world is in a really weird place. I think it's hard to, I don't know. In the 80s and 90s, I felt like it was kind of easy to, it was like a category, man, woman. And it still kind of is. But I think in terms of roles, you know, the role of a man, the role of a woman, I think it's everything now. I think, yeah, I don't know. Mm. I mean, I guess if you think of it like any organization or the military is, yeah, you have a specific role, a specific job, a specific duty, but, you need to be able to do the duties of one person below you and one person ahead of you in case either one of them are not there. Probably relationships are the same way. Maybe your roles are set up, but I think too, you got to be able to go plus one, minus one in terms of what role you need to take on at the moment. I mean, especially sometimes as single parents, they have to be all the roles. That's got to be tough. My hat goes off to single parents, and my heart goes out to you because I know it's tough. It's tough in a place where we have both parents. But yeah, quite the long pause there because I kind of had something I thought about saying, but wasn't sure if I really wanted to say it. But I think with the way the world is, the way the world was, everything we've seen, it's easy to see how it can be confusing. Confusing, all the shit men and little boys have to contend with and think about in terms of what they're going to hold in and what they're going to express. Because the world is upside down and inside out. You know, some states and some schools are going off the fucking rails with whether it's what they're teaching or parental rights and all kinds of bullshit. So you can imagine how, you know, this is that unspoken emotional, mental, and spiritual weight that men have to carry. And that we all kind of have to carry in a way. Because we're all human. Nobody's immune to it, male or female. But I'm a man and specifically talking about that, especially as that expectation as a provider and you know, with some women, like their whole goal in life is to be a mom and a wife. And once they reach that, they're fulfilled. And that's what matters to them. And that's what drives them. But, I don't think men naturally grow up saying, I want to be a father and a husband. I think we're kind of taught from early on, like, I want to be a firefighter, a commando, a police officer, a singer in a rock band. I don't know. Yeah. At least when I was coming up, that's kind of how it was. So, yeah, it's a lot to contend with in a world that's been shifted. You could see how it could lead to confusion and mental health issues. But I think the first, you know, it all starts with a conversation and starts with that conversation and kind of being okay with it and not attacking each other over it and being like, well, you know, comparing men to women, what they have to do, blah, blah, blah. Hmm. Does no good, solves nothing. You know, the key of the discussion is to be more open, to get it all out there so we don't struggle with it. And so we can have better lives, have a better world, have better iterations of how we interact with each other, family dynamics. If life and the world is about love, then it's about making whatever configuration that is best for that and gives you the most time. Yeah, that's what I think. Because you could, there's the other model where, hey, I mean, men, we got to do what we got to do. And sometimes that means maybe you go work in the oil fields for 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. And some people do that. Some people have to do it. And some people make it work. But I also know it's hard to have a relationship with someone who's not there. A whole other struggle you're dealing with is both the man and woman. But I think we do all these things to kind of, I don't know. I even, like, that's a struggle, even myself as I sit here. It's a struggle as a man of going, hey, hey, I could do something like that and add to the security of my family. But then I'd never be home. Or I can be home every day. Took my daughter to school this morning, went to the gym, record an episode, talk to a couple of friends. I can have a little less certainty, maybe a little less money, but I'm here and enjoying every moment of it. But I certainly struggle with, hey, you could get a higher paying job that demands a lot of your time and effort, and your family would be maybe more secure. But then you wouldn't be there. They would get less of you. You could drift apart. Things might not be as meaningful. Something could happen in the interim. Chicken today, feathers tomorrow. Life can change in an instant. And meanwhile, you were grinding your face off, never saw your family. Maybe you pass away in a car accident. Maybe they pass away in a car accident. And you didn't get any of that quality time because you spent all that fucking time working and providing because that's the model you were raised and grew up to believe. Yeah, that's what we were taught men were and what men did. But part of me thinks the reality is real strength is sometimes saying no to bullshit models, creating a new one, forging your own way, doing what's important to you and your family. However that looks, whatever that means to you. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed some of this. Some of it was just thoughts of you know, when I asked ChatGPT for an episode idea, this is what popped up, and I thought it played in perfect to this thought of, hey, it might be Friday's episode, it may be Monday's episode, it may be a bonus episode. But being a father, being a man is not easy. And when you see one and he's having a hard time, or maybe he just seems off or silent, know that a lot of the shit that I talked about, that's what's going on in the back of their head somewhere. Things they've thought about and trying to figure out how to be the man they want to be amidst everyone trying to weigh in of what they think a man should be. The real deal is go out and be the man you want to be, the man you needed when you were growing up. You can be the different things you want. You don't have to be one thing. I do many different things to earn a living. I'm not defined by my career or one single thing, but many. So hopefully men won't have to carry around as much stuff, as much unspoken stuff, because we're talking about it and trying to become better. And it takes us all. Starts with a conversation, starts with support, um, understanding, awareness, some acceptance, but most important, a little grace for us to figure this out and get back on track, and so we as men can be better and we can have a better world and a strong world. So, to all you men out there struggling, suffering in silence, I see you. Reach out. Reach out to me. Reach out to a friend. There's men's groups. I have a private accountability group. If you need help being accountable with something, reach out to me. I have accountability coaching available. But yeah, it's going to take us all together um, to set different expectations of what it means to be a man, and then also to just be better men, more loving, more caring, to be able to be violent if you have to, but to choose love over violence, choose kindness over hatred. Until then, go out and be the person that you would want to meet. And if you need any help with accountability, hit me up.
Asteroid of fear.